reputation as well. We also are going to go over our theme. And we want to be unified not just in what we're talking about, but we want to be unified in the goal of children's ministry and VBS as well. So let's talk about that for a second. What is the goal? Broadly, it's to make disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ, teaching them to obey all that he has commanded. Specifically, when it comes to our children's programs, we want to provide a safe, fun, and welcoming environment where kids can functionally learn about who Jesus is and why they need him to be their Lord and Savior. Safe. Let's go over safe. Safe. We want to go over our child safety policy that kind of covers what do we do to when we have kids who come in that maybe are from an abused situation. We want to know what to do to provide a safe environment for them. We also want to protect ourselves from accusations, right? But we also want to protect ourselves from maybe wolves who come in, who want to be a part of children's ministry. And we need to know how to do that. And that's a very delicate issue. That's hard to do. We can't just throw around accusations blindly as well. We also want to protect our children when we're eating snacks. And so that's why Jeremy is going to come up here in a second and show us what to do when we have a choking child. Fun. We want our ministry to be fun. So we're going to talk about the different methods of learning. And having these different methods, they each have a unique fun element to them. Crafts, games, activities, teamwork, competition, color, and music. These all contribute to the learning about the world and the truth of God that he has created. So, if you've ever been the type of person to just sit down and read a boring theological book that's 1,000 pages long, that is not the only way to learn about God. Okay, he created this world, and as you can see outside, the trees are green, the sky is blue, and he's given us light sensors in our eyes to enjoy that and be all for the purpose of pointing back to this incredible and glorious God who loves us. So we want to mimic that in some way as we, bring kids into our church and teach them about the gospel. We also want to be welcoming because God welcomed us. And so now we get to welcome others into his church and show them what it means to love and to be loved. Okay, training outline. This is how it's going to go for today. We're going to go over over CPR with Jeremy. We'll get into our child safety policy. Then we'll do our VBS training. And lastly, get into our VBS teams and do some initial brainstorming together. All right, Jeremy, we're ready for you. Yeah, it's going to come up here in a second. Okay, so what to do with a choking child. That's what I put together for Jeremy. Whether he follows it or not, don't matter.
We'll follow it. Good morning. So, choking child. We've got these devices here, the dechoker that Thomas has purchased. Pretty good device. Used in a lot of daycares. So the first thing is it's FDA approved, and if you help somebody, you're not in any line of trouble because of the Good Samaritan laws. So nobody can legally come after you for helping any child or anybody here in the church. So you don't have to worry about the legal system. And we'll just kind of get into it. What's your next slide? So here's the video that we're going to show. So things to look for is somebody that can't speak in full sentences, somebody that's changing colors. Those are the severe cases. If you've got somebody that can still speak that's choking, probably pat them on the back and get whatever's lodged out. But once they have trouble speaking or change mental status where they're becoming tired or lethargic, you're going to want to get this device. So you'll see in the video this device is not going to be friendly to the child. They're probably not, if they're fighting you away from it, that's a good thing. It means they're not choking that bad. If they're letting you do it, it's probably a pretty severe thing. When to call the ambulance, I would say if you're grabbing for this device, I would have somebody else be calling for the ambulance. We have wheels, we can turn around, so that's not really a big deal if you guys decide to cancel us. If you call us on scene to check out anybody and they're under 18, we have to notify their parent or legal guardian to do a refusal where they stay here, otherwise we have to transport. So just keep in mind that we will be reaching out, or if the church wants to reach out and let the family know as soon. Obviously, this is going to be the emergency, then we'll worry about contacting family. But that's going to happen for us to leave the child here, unless they've signed a liability waiver saying we have all which I'm sure they have. We don't have all responsibility like medical power, do we, Thomas? Okay, so I would say probably not. So we would have to transport in that situation. But this is a 2-minute video that kind of shows the device, and then we'll answer questions afterwards.
My name is Dr. Randall Snook, and I'm going to introduce you to the choker device today and show you how to use this device in a choking emergency. Let's first talk about the device itself, and I'll point out some of the parts of this device. The application tube, this is really like a tongue depressor, the mask, which creates a seal, and then the plunger, which pulls air through the tubing to try to withdraw the obstruction. And of course the exhaust valve, so that you can actually push air back out through this instead of back into the patient's mouth. If you simply take one of the dechokers and put your finger in the airway and pull back, if you notice, I can't pull back. That's the kind of generation of pressure that you can get with this thing. This valve, this one-way valve, will actually push air out of the tubing and not back into the mouth. If I clamp the one-way valve and I try to push on the plunger, I can't do that. If you notice, I cannot push that through. So that tells you that this one-way valve is actually going to, when in the right position, push air out of the valve. You probably heard that, how that pushed that out. So let me demonstrate the dechoker. It's a very simple device. I think you're going to find it really easy to use. Well, as you approach the choking victim, of course, make sure their mouth's open. If they're conscious, you ask them to open their mouth. If they're not, you're going to have to open it yourself. And you're going to use the device like a tongue depressor and push down the tongue to insert that into the mouth. The mask needs to cover both the mouth and the nose to get a good seal. You push the head back, tilt the chin up, and after applying some firm pressure to get a good seal, pull back on the device. Now you can check to see if you actually got the obstruction out. If you didn't, pushing the plunger through is going to go through the exhaust valve. Again, you could go back in, get a tight seal on both the mouth and nose, pull back on the device. Well, as you can see, I got it out the first time, and the obstruction is now in the device. I'm excited about the dechoker because I think there's finally an alternative to the abdominal thrust. The abdominal thrust always relied on the air in the lungs to be pushed against the obstruction to force it out. The dechoker works on the opposite side to suck the actual obstruction out of the trachea. I think this is going to save a lot of lives.
Okay, so Thomas just told me they're right now in the toddler room is where they're located. So, I mean, pretty simple. You can push down on it if it's in the kid's mouth and it's going to blow the air out, so you're not pushing anything back. Obviously, he says not to do it, but if you do, it's okay. He didn't really touch on the seal method. So when we ventilate somebody, we use what's called the EC method. So if you take your fingers and you put 3 fingers on the jaw, you make an E, and then the C around the mask, you make a C. So preferably if you get 2 people doing that, you get 2 ECs going on, and it seals it, and then 1 person to pull would be easiest. But if you're by yourself, you can just do it one-handed, and it sounds like it'll work pretty well. So that's the way that we get seals for when we're ventilating people. So that's all I have on that. Any questions? Go ahead. So the question is there any chance of collapsing a lung?
The one we bought is for toddlers, infants and toddlers. Yeah, so there are larger ones that would be for older kids. Yeah.
So I don't think so. The only way to really, when you deal with most people that collapse a lung, it's because they force too much air in. So like when we're ventilating patients, we have to watch which size of bag we use. We've actually decreased our bag sizing because it's blowing in and basically blows the side of the lung out. But sucking against it, I don't think so. And you're going to have air escape when you're not going to get that seal perfectly. And to do it one time, I just don't see it. So, and you also have the object in the way, so it's not like you're getting all that force down into the chest cavity. Oh. Yeah, they're probably going to cough a lot after you do it, though. So lots of coughing, which is okay. So when I get on scene, the first thing I see, if I see a kid awake and screaming, I'm always happy because at least they're awake and screaming. So if they're unconscious, that's when I start getting really nervous. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. So the other two things I'm going to talk about is our AED locations are in this hallway here by the admin office and also on the WeCare side. They're approved for child and adult. Short answer, you open it up and it gives you step-by-step instructions. Pads are already in there. They're already ready to go. So it will tell you how to do that. And the last thing I'm going to do, this is a class we put on for free at Mercy. It's a Stop the Bleed class. It's normally an hour and a half. We're going to do it in 2 minutes. So we're going to hit the big pieces, but the security team is wanting to put gauze and tourniquets available throughout the building. We're going to be replacing AEDs next year because they're hitting end of life, and the new ones won't fit in the old boxes. So we'll have those boxes, so we'll be able to put more dechokers and get more throughout the building. But there's cheap ways of doing that. Obviously, the budget is the biggest issue right now. So I'm going to grab the two things I need, and then I'll show it really quick, and then that'll be it for me. All right, so this is our little guy here. He's going to be our bleeding victim. It's set up as a stabbing and gunshot victim, but let's not hope for that. So the short answer is going to be when you've got bleeding, you want to get the clothing out of the way, see the bleeding, and find your gauze and put pressure and hold it. If it bleeds through the gauze, you want to add more gauze. You don't want to take it off because you pull that clot out of the way and you continue to bleed. So just hold it and then call for help is what the class teaches. Obviously, we got kids, so it'll just kind of depend on at what point you do that. The other one is the CAT tourniquet. This is carried by military and most law enforcement agencies. It can go over clothing, just not bulky items in your pocket. But we always say high and tight for arms, so up here in the bicep area. And then on the legs, you want to do it in your thigh area. You can use more than one if you need to, but the short answer is you're just going to put it on and turn it until the bleeding stops. So with this one, you're just going to put the strap on, get it tight, and you're just going to twist this rod until the bleeding stops and then lock it in. The timepiece is on here. It really doesn't matter. There's been no significant life loss or limb loss with a tourniquet. We did a lot of studies in the war in Iraq, and they showed us that. So that's that device. And the other one is We use this on the ambulance, and I'm going to recommend it for here because these are about $30 and these are $5. So just a little bit cheaper. We can get more throughout the building. But it's called a SWAT tee, and how it works is it's a band. So you see on here it's got diamonds, and we want to make them squares. So you're just going to put it on and start wrapping it until they become squares, and that's it. So, but yep, that's it. You're just making diamond squares and tightening it up. It works very well. We do not have these two devices yet. They're not budgeted for this year. This will be a next year thing if they have the money available that the security team wants to do. I just saw the group of people here and thought we would do the education on it so you guys have it if you see it in the future. That's what it is. But that's where we're at. Any questions over any of the stuff that I can answer? Yes, sir. So what you're saying is you want to apply the tourniquet as high on the limb and as tight as possible, right? Correct. Yes. So the tourniquet high on the limb and as tight as possible to stop the bleeding. Yes, that is the goal. Thank you, Andrew. So Andrew helped me teach a Stop the Bleed class in the high school last year. He got to help out with the active shooter training. So we spent a day going over all this stuff. Any other questions? Go ahead. So the midsection these are only approved for limbs. So the midsection is go to the hospital very quickly. So you need a surgeon. You don't need, so it would be the direct pressure. We would use that direct pressure. And then, yep, so if you've got bleeding in your trunk or on your neck, you can't put a tourniquet around somebody's neck, unfortunately, in some cases. So we would definitely do direct pressure, and then these are cases where they're most likely getting helicopter rides to either Columbia or Springfield, or we're going to drive as fast as we can. They need blood products until they can get surgery. So it's a pretty significant, good question. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. Have a great day.
All right, good. Let's get back into it. Parents, if we could remind children maybe not to do bounce the balls. Playing back there would be great. Just bouncing the balls is a little bit loud. But all right. All right, why do we need... All right. Thanks, Joey. Why do we believe that we need to protect children? There's a lot of ways you can come at this. I kind of just picked two because Jesus kind of gives us, two points of view on this. The first one is you don't want a millstone tied around your neck, right? You don't want, there's a judgment piece to it. We protect children because Christ says that it's very important to him that the children come to him, that we do not hinder them because they are innocent, they are vulnerable, and their innocence allows them to believe basically anything we tell them. That's a high calling, and that's a huge responsibility. So there's a judgment aspect to this. The other one is the positive. Jesus says, suffer little children, and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. They're precious. We want to be a part of what God is doing in bringing the nations and in bringing people to himself. And children are a massive mission field. So, all right, let's go through our core beliefs. A lot of this is stuff that I got from Heather, so I'm very thankful for the work that she has already put into this. We want to promote healthy relationships. Many of the children attending Awana and VBS have never had a good example of a healthy relationship between adults and children. We have that opportunity to share with them what it looks like to love like Jesus wants us to. And that, having adult and child relationships is a positive thing. They get an opportunity to look up to someone older and mature and wise, and have a good idea of what the Christian life is like, who Jesus is like. I think of good fathers. Looking at a good father is as a small version of looking at our Heavenly Father. And so we want to promote those types of relationships because they're extremely effective. Paul says, imitate me, right? And he was the greatest of the apostles. Protecting is our responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility, no matter if you're working with children or just watching from afar. We all have a responsibility to use our discernment and our eyes and our ears to in our capacity and within our capacities to protect our children. And I think we'll get into this a little bit more later on. Preventing and responding to abuse. This requires training and accountability. It's not like we don't all necessarily know how we should handle situations that come up. I had to go to Susie. Is Susie here? Oh, hey, Susie. I had to go and talk to her the other day, like, hey, what would you do in this situation? And what a great resource to have someone like Susie who's been working with, children from all sorts of homes and has had all sorts of experience. And she learned a lot of that on the fly from training, from just whatever, the Lord. And it's not something that we all just know. We do need training. And we need others to rely on as well. Okay, key commitments. We're just going to go through these. We're not going to talk about them too much. Zero tolerance. What that means is we're not going to tolerate patterns of stepping over the line. Okay. We're going to report to the authorities when we see something that fits that category. I guess one thing about reporting to authorities, there's some situations where you report to myself or the pastor of this church. And then there's some cases you need to go straight to the civil magistrate. You need to go right to them because they have been given the sword of justice, and that is outside of our jurisdiction. And actually, a big reason why churches get in hot water is because they try to deal with that in-house, and that it basically results in cover-ups, and that's not what we want to do. No one volunteers who is convicted or confessed to abusing a child. If accused, you're suspended from serving children. Accusation does not mean conviction, so we just want to distance ourselves from the accusation to allow time for the authorities to figure out what's going on, right? If you don't abide by policies, you're not allowed to work with children or youth. All right, managing risks. Risks to the safety of the children. Each of us has a sin nature. And we are redeemed by having the Holy Spirit living within us. But it is our responsibility to manage the risks involved when working with other people. Risks to the reputation of volunteers and staff, and risks to the reputation of ministry at church. Okay, my notes here don't cover each of these individually. So, risk to the children is obvious, but perhaps you didn't know that the greatest risk to children in church settings is older children and youth. I was shocked when I heard that the greatest risk to children is other children. So we're going to get into like, isolation and discipline and those kinds of things. And keep in mind this point of other children harming other children, okay? So it's not only do we want to have adults not being isolated with children, we don't want to have children really being isolated with each other as well. It's a little bit different when it's, our own closed events with our own people. There tends to be a little bit more of a gray area, but when we're doing something like VBS and we're getting kids that we don't even know who they are, this is going to be really important. All right, I'm going to skip this part. Okay, 3 ways to reduce risk. First is reduce isolation. We address this in our code of conduct document by restricting 1-to-1 situations and having 2 adults with each group. Most of you already know this. We do this in our Sunday school ministries, in our Awana ministries. We try and have 2 adults all the time. And you can even have 1 adult and 1 youth worker, but then there's restrictions on what the youth can do, and like youth cannot change diapers and those kinds of things. But the big thing is we do not want just 1 person with a whole group of kids, for various reasons. We want to balance power and control. Teachers require an imbalance of power and control in order to keep the classroom functioning. When this becomes a risk is when power is out of balance and adults don't keep to the code of conduct. A good example would be you're losing control of your classroom and you resort to giving out threats, okay? Threats that you have no intention of following through on. Or you even would, sometimes even the threats can be intended to strike a little bit of fear into the child, because that child doesn't know how to respect you or whatever. It's an easy temptation, and it's not hard to get there, right? We've probably all done it, honestly, and it's something that we need to repent of, and it's just something we need to be aware of and constantly be asking the Lord for patience, right? So keep that in mind. Also, another example would be isolating yourself with a child in order to deal with a behavior issue. Sometimes this needs to happen, right? You need to pull the child out of the class and get on their level, have a conversation with them. But we have cameras in our hallways. So that is a great place to do that. The camera is that second person. Okay, the camera is that third person. So make sure if you have to talk to a child and give some instruction and some discipline, and by discipline I mean like reminding them of our 3-strike rule and reminding them of the consequences that you already laid out for them. Okay, do that in an area where there is a camera, where you are not on your own with the child. And accountability. We increase accountability by establishing boundaries and hold each other to those boundaries. We can create a culture of accountability when we hold others accountable. It's pretty basic. Don't be the person who says we're going to hold accountability and then not accept any accountability on yourself. Lead by example. You're all leaders in here because you're all working with children. And, we get a lot of new people in our church periodically who express interest in wanting to help. So for us here who are established, we're committed. We're the ones who are faithfully coming to church. Our children are here. We're invested. Let's create a culture amongst ourselves so when new people do come in, they can see. Again, it goes back to the power of seeing an example. They can see what we're all about and what we're doing, and they should be intuitive enough to pick up on the fact that, okay, this is important. And sometimes those questions of what do I do in this situation, they'll know because they'll see it. So I thought I'd put this verse in here when talking about accountability, but 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. When we are a team, a unified team working together on this issue of child safety, we will have a stronger ministry and we will be stronger and more protected from accusations, and worse than an accusation is the misleading of a child. All right, let's talk about reporting. This is where I may defer to the expert in the room. Experts. Actually, we have a few people who really know what they're talking about. Okay, mandated reporters. Mandated reporters, by law, is anyone caring for children. If I have my understanding correct about this, caring for children would be people who are in paid positions, but also those who are volunteers under like a ministry of myself. So when I read this, it sounds like anyone who is like in Susie's position and her workers. But because we are a ministry, it's me and then anyone who comes under the children's ministry as well. So you, then where I'm going with this is you are all, by definition, mandated reporters. Okay, go ahead and type that down. I'm just kidding. I put it on there because I have intentions of putting this online so that you can just click on it. But that's a great document that kind of tells you and lays out more of the, all the nuance of reporting and who should report when and where. So that's good. So we are going to report to civil authorities when we witness or discover an act of abuse. What do we mean by abuse? Go ahead. Yeah. Or physical abuse. Like, would abuse be grabbing the kid by pinching him on the shoulder and dragging him along? Could that be abuse? In a situation like that, would you report to the authorities, or would you talk to me? Yeah. This is what I mean by it's not always easy, because our definitions, we have different understandings of what abuse is. And this would have been a great time to actually go into abuse, but I just thought of it now. But actually, Heather or Susie, would you guys like to talk about abuse and what that looks like?
I feel like to me, abuse is whenever you see a child that has been hurt, physically, and they tell you that they have been hurt physically. Sometimes they tell you the truth, that it was a parent did it, and sometimes they lie. And so that's not our job to determine that. Our job is just to call the 1-800 number and say, I have this child, here's what this child has said to me, and I want to let you know that. And that's our job. Our job is not to determine, is this really happening? Is it not happening? That's the investigator's job, and that's what they do. That's what they get paid to do. They go into a home with a police officer usually and say, here's what's been said. We just need to find out if it's true or if it isn't true. And the parent will say, search my house. You can see I'm a good parent, or you can talk to whoever you want to and you can see. Or they'll become really nervous, and then the police can take over and go from there. But it's never our job to really determine if the abuse is real or not abuse, or if it's not real. If you suspect abuse, you should call that 1-800 number.
say, Heather? No? Perfect. Thank you, Susie. That takes a lot of weight off of our shoulders to make those decisions and determine, should I report? Well, you know what? I can call this 1-800 number. Something's not sitting right with me. And absolutely, that's great. Thank you, Susie. Disclosure. Susie touched on this. When a child tells you of abuse that they experienced, and reasonable cause, okay? It does not require absolute proof, okay? So if the child had told you something, but and you can't see the marks, you don't need to see them. You can still believe the child and call that number. And it also means one or more signs of abuse are present. So, and this was in there. You can contact the senior pastor and complete our knowledge of suspected child abuse form. So this is under suspected, not there is. Okay, so there is Cody then would call the number, and you can just go through those channels because there's a hierarchy of authority here. So, and that form is in the back of your handout. And one of the reasons why you would talk to Cody or myself or Susie is if you just don't know what you should do. And we would rather you talk to somebody than resort to, I'm scared, I don't know what to do, and then not do something. It's easy to be in that position if you really are unsure and kind of intimidated and scared, and there's all kinds of thoughts going through your head. Sometimes the temptation is I don't really want to do anything. No. You come talk to somebody. Talking to somebody is better than not doing nothing.
One thing I might mention too that I always feel like is really helpful is if you will still let the senior pastor know, or if it's a weaker child, let myself know, so that when we are contacted, we're not blindsided by like, oh yeah, I had no clue that that had happened or that was going on. If it's someone that the Pastor Cody, if they contact him and say, so I heard this happened in VBS, or this teacher said this, or what do you think? And he knew nothing at all about it, that's kind of a hard place to put him in. And so I feel like it's really good to let a leader know when you do contact someone so that they can be aware of the steps that's going on too. Just kind of keeping them in the loop legally means a lot.
So I just wanted to share an experience that I had when we were in Texas. A student had told me that her father had abused her in an inappropriate way. And so when I told Cody and the staff, everyone was like, well, that's actually kind of common knowledge, so it's already been handled. And I think we had only been there for 6 months to a year, so I was still kind of being familiar with the area, and I was like, oh, okay, it's already taken care of. But then a couple days later, I had the police come to my door, and they said, why didn't you report this to the authorities? And I said, well, I was under the understanding that it was already addressed. And so I got a warning, but it was an eye-opener that when somebody tells you something, even if someone says it's already been taken care of, it is really good to protect yourself to go ahead and report it to the authorities as well, because if you don't, then you're kind of a culprit for being a part of it. So anyway. Well, they said we could. I think I just had Malachi. They're like, we could take you and arrest you for it. But I guess under our circumstances, And I had a lot of people that were witnesses to saying that it was common knowledge in the area. They gave me grace on that.
No, you're just.
Did I still leave it? No, maybe I was speaking loud enough. So yeah, so I think it was circumstantial, but I mean it was also a pretty corrupt city too. So, but I'm thankful that they were kind towards me and forgiving of me of that. So.
Add to that. If I can add to that question, yes, a mandated reporter is criminally liable for not reporting.
One more thing too, if it's okay. So a lot of times, depending on the abuse investigator that you get, they don't take it real serious. Children are taught to lie about things. I mean, that's really sad, but they're taught to lie, and so it's very hard for a abuse investigator to get to the bottom of the truth sometime. But if you report it, and then there's 4 or 5 more reports that come along the way, then they are more likely to look into it deeper. And so even if someone says to you, that's already been reported, go ahead and report it again. Because as Austin says, you will be legally, you can be legally bound to that. And so go ahead and report it too, again, because I found that the more times things are reported, they're more apt to take things serious. And sometimes the more times things are reported, our sheriff's department is more apt to take things seriously too, and maybe not really overstep DFS, but kind of encourage them roughly. Yeah, and so yes, the more reports that are made, the better it is for the child, I feel like. Sorry, I shouldn't have that.
Great. Okay. Let's get into boundary violations. So when we are as we're creating a culture of accountability in our ministry, you see someone who took a child out, did nothing wrong, but they did it in an area that didn't have that second eye or third eye. And you talk to them, and you say, hey, you did this. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Okay. That is a misjudgment or slipped their mind. If we see something like that, we want to address it. But if we see something like that, we're not going to be like, you're done. Get out of this ministry. You're a terrible volunteer. You're contributing to, whatever. Throw out all kinds of accusations against them. We're not looking for one-time misjudgments or accidental violations. We're looking for willful and repetitive boundary violations. Because what does willful and repetitive behaviors speak to? It speaks to it's in their heart. It speaks to that there is no understanding of what's at stake. There is no submission to authority, and so we can't have those folks who are in that state participating and working with our children. So, what could a boundary violation look like? It could look like an adult or volunteer, student volunteer in an isolated area with a child. It could look like a volunteer intimidating the child. Intimidation includes, but is not limited to, like raising your voice in a very direct and rude and fearful kind of way. You're trying to intimidate. There's a difference between raising your voice and being like, hey, getting their attention. That's okay. But you can tell the difference between someone who's just trying to get a child's attention versus someone trying to intimidate that child and strike fear into them. Changing posture for the purpose of putting fear into the child, right? Like if you square up to the person, you know, I think of Andrew right away, just with what you do for work, right? You want to, like, there's a way to get, you'll put your feathers up, you know, and really like, ooh, okay, I need to back off. That is not what we do, because we're trying to promote healthy relationships between adults and children. And threats that are outside of our three-strike policy. One thing I will say about our three-strike policy, we'll touch on that in a bit. You should not throw out the threat of our three-strike policy haphazardly. If you are going to say, hey, this is an official verbal warning, and that's a good way to do it. This is an official verbal warning. Next time, you know, you have to go out and see Mr. Thomas or whoever's at the check-in desk, okay? And then you follow up on that. It's not something that you would just throw out, because if we do that, then it means nothing to the child either, right? So another boundary violation could be within the realm of joking. So certain types of jokes that are maybe sexual in nature, coming from an adult, that's really alarming. And so if you hear that or see that, you really want to nip that in the butt, and zero tolerance, right? Key commitment, zero tolerance. If an adult or student volunteer wants to give a child a hug, and the hug seems uncomfortable, even if it's in a visible area, you know, sometimes you're just trying to help the child or calm them down or whatever, and naturally your instinct is to, especially as mothers, to like, okay, come here. But if you don't know that child, the child is new, and there's instant, you know, pushback, it's okay. You can you don't have to try and, oh, I really need to calm him down this way. Then you would just want to contact the parent and bring them in. Do we have any other good examples from our experienced folks on what a boundary violation could look like in your ministry?
I was talking with someone on Wednesday night with like the toddlers and the infants, mostly the toddlers. So when they misbehave and we, you know, give them that warning, what is the best way to, I guess, it wouldn't be discipline, but just show them, I guess, the right way, if that makes sense. The warning doesn't work? Yes.
We don't have a check-in person for toddlers. Toddlers, and Heather, step in here anytime. One way I look at it with my little children is they're very, very young, short attention spans, you know, redirect, and if you need to put them in timeout, short, and then bring them back in, redirect, short. If this is something that's going on, like, I can't keep doing this. Let's say you got 15 new kids and you're just two of you, go get mom.
I think that's very much going to depend on a conversation and getting to know mom and dad. For some parents, they would appreciate that. Others would not. So I would really make an effort at drop-off and pickup to get to know mom and dad, see how they want to handle that. But that is really why we do keep contact numbers on the kids, because at that young age, we don't want coming to church to be like we're not teaching them something they're not already learning at home. So we want it to be an extension of home. So it might mean calling mom a little more often at the beginning until you get a good rhythm down. But definitely a lot of communication is helpful.
Thank you. Okay, appropriate touch. Okay, touch should be open rather than secretive. Show care for the child rather than meet a need in the adult. Touch, including hugs, should never be forced. Be age and developmentally appropriate. Like, for example, where's Clem? Coming up and sitting on your lap reading a book. Very appropriate for a toddler in that situation. Always communicate respect for the child. And immediately cease if the child is in any way uncomfortable. All right. I should say on that last one, go to page 2 on the Code of Conduct page. That is where you'll find a more in-depth explanation and procedure on what appropriate touch should look like. All right. Our 3-step procedure for discipline is an age-appropriate warning. Then it's a timeout. That's also age-appropriate. There was a good example a few weeks ago. There was a young man who he was in the pre-K room, and the leaders there were like, "Hey, we've talked to him many times, given him a lot of good warnings. He just needs to have a talk with you outside." And it was a great opportunity for me to get to know him and talk to him and kind of figure out what's going on. And the Lord was gracious that He allowed me to be able to speak to him in a way that he could understand. And he went back in there and everything was great, and hasn't been any problems with him since. So, sometimes those are, you don't ever want to have a child leave the classroom, but sometimes it's appropriate because it's not fair to the other kids, right? It's not fair to them because now you're taking away opportunities to teach. And then if that doesn't work, you can always call the parents for immediate pickup. Any questions on that?
I did want to say that for sometimes it's good to also see what's going on and what the needs of the child are. It could be they're hungry, they're tired, they are sitting next to someone who's agitating them, or they're doing the agitating. So sometimes it's worth looking into what's going on with the child, and that's where that timeout kind of remove the child from that situation and gathering information on why is this going on, because sometimes it's a very simple solution. Here, have a granola bar and we'll go back to class and have fun. But
also, the step 0 would be to redirect. So always we're trying to and we can stay in that stage indefinitely as long as you can stay in that stage and your class can stay in that stage. But you redirect as much as you can, then we move to warning. Because, I do teenagers. Warning and timeout don't always work so well. So the first stage is really where we live until things get out of hand.
And some teachers will have more patience than others. So pray for patience. Severe discipline, if there's harm involved, call the parents right away. Okay, photos and videos. Something I'm working on is getting photo consent forms or photo consent options on all of our forms, just so that we can stay on top of that. Good thing for you to know if you're taking pictures of your kids, right? Make sure, they're appropriate and not, use your discretion there. And maybe we can even talk about contacting the parents before you send it to them. We typically don't do a lot of putting our kids on the public forum on Facebook. We're putting it on our children's ministry page. And so even there, though, I think we should make sure that our kids are okay, or our parents are okay having their kids being put on there. So that's something that I haven't totally gotten around to doing yet. So in the meantime, just be very wise. For VBS, that is on the form. So although some of you, I just put it on 3 days ago. So there have been some registrations that did not get to answer that question, but from here on out, we will have that information on there. Okay, bathroom breaks. Not your bathroom break yet. We're talking about bathroom breaks. Treat times of intervention with thoughtful care. If possible, same-gender workers to help with crowd control and assistance inside the bathroom if it is needed. The privacy of a bathroom usually can lead to kids mucking around, and this is really relevant for us right now, right, Austin? It was this conversation we had about kids, yes, plugging sinks and causing bathrooms to get flooded. It's a problem. Assistance with older children must be sensitively managed, but as a rule, it should be same gender. Generic rule: workers wait in the hallway, and if needed, prop open the outer door for crowd control. All of our restrooms, with the exception of the handicapped toilet outside of the youth room, are designed that the outer doors can be open while allowing privacy within the main bathroom. For safety's sake, student workers should not assist in the bathroom areas or with diaper changes. They can help with crowd control in the hallway, but same guidelines on supervision apply to them as to the adults. This is nursery specific. Change diapers in designated areas. Don't leave children unattended on the changing tables. And ideally, it should be the women who change diapers. Nursery bathroom doors need to stay open when assisting children in the toilet. If your help is not required, but an older child uses the nursery bathroom, the child may close the door for privacy. I should probably mention this here. If you're in the nursery room, especially the toddler room, and you need to leave, and there's one person in there, I have talked to the security guys, and so that camera in the toddler room is that third person who can watch during those times. I would love it if nursery workers could just, hey, nursery to security, I got to go change a diaper, I got to go help in the bathroom, can you keep your eye on the room? It's good protocol, it's good procedure, it's probably a good habit to do. It's not one of those things, because we haven't been doing it, if you forget over and over again, so we have that there to help, so just for your information. All right. And lastly, never forget to pray. Okay? And here's 1 John 5:14-15. And this is the confidence that we have toward him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us in whatever we ask, we know that we have the requests that we have asked for of him in accordance with his will. We're desiring to instruct these children in the ways of the Lord and protect them. That sounds like that's part of his will. So let's pray about that constantly, and leave it with, do what we can with what we are able, and leave the rest with the Lord. And I'm sure Susie, again, probably has a ton of examples of how, all she's left to just pray, and has seen example after example of just the Lord doing marvelous works in this area of protecting children and seeing restoration and all that. So